This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, compulsively punchable.
He's the kind of guy who you'd probably just punch on the arm really hard if you ever met him.
Worshipped by feminists.
He pokes fun at feminism and women, just joking around, his whole sandwich making thing.
Mildly inspiring.
Yes, I recommend the Ben Settle Show, and anybody who isn't on it, that's their own loss.
Somewhat authentic.
Ben is a very distinct personality. There's no fluff. I can't stand fluff.
Syrupy sweet.
Tells it like it is, and sometimes may not be the most polite manner, shall we say.
Kind of useful.
So I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaching and masterminds, and I've learned more from Ben Settle's podcast than from any of that.
Semi-intelligent.
Ben sounds like a crazy guy at times, but he's one of the smartest individuals in marketing I've ever met.
Mostly forgettable.
He's always in the forefront of my mind.
The BenSettle.com podcast begins now.
This is Ben Settle of BenSettle.com and the BenSettle.com Friendly Neighborhood Podcast. Jonathan, I teased everybody a little bit, especially people who listened to the last version of this podcast, that when it was called The Ben Settle Show. We used to do periodically these things called Email Players Rules episodes. And these Email Players Rules became, and I'm saying this for new people who have no idea what this means, people who are long-term in my audience, you guys know what it is already. But these Email Players Rules are kind of like, I don't know, my very small, meek version of a cult following. Yeah, that's how
okay.
That's exactly. meek and humble, cult-like. I don't know, they have like a cult-like audience just for these rules. And all they are is this. They're just rules and maxims and ideas and principles that I follow in my business and personal life that have helped me out tremendously. We've done well over 100. Well, not well over 100. We're going to start with
Ben,
one.
I know you're going to get into this, but I have to jump in here as fanboy and say that today we're doing like 106 and up. And the last time we were on the air doing the old show, we were under 100 somewhere. And so I know there's some lost episodes, so those just going to stay lost forever. I know you gave them away with the Villains book, but are people just never going to hear those few email player rules that are kind of out there in the ether?
I'll figure something out with that. I was thinking about that today, actually. It's funny you brought that up. I think there was two episodes like that. Well, at least one, if not two, because there was 12 lost episodes.
Yeah.
So, I try to do one like every 5 or 6 episodes. But yeah, I'll figure something out. People who are really like stressing out, 'cause I'm sure there's people just stressing out about this right now.
Short circuit.
And if they are,
numbers do not compute.
Well, you know what they need to learn, Jonathan? I'm going to do them a favor. I'm making them better people. And this is what we do on the BenSettle.com podcast. We make people better by making them more patient and less emotional and more focused. So when it happens, it'll be a surprise, and a pleasant surprise, hopefully, depending. Anyway, since you ruined my train of thought, you bastard.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
And I appreciate that, because that helps me with my patience level. You see what I mean? It all works together. I mean, there was a time when I would have been like a mushroom cloud laying mofo with that. I would start yelling at you and stuff. I would have yelled at Cupcake, even if she has nothing to do with it.
Threaten our lives.
Start threatening you guys. But I'm not going to do that. I'm simply going to pick up where I think I left off and explaining what this is. So they're just rules and maxims and principles that I follow through my life that have helped me out tremendously. Some of these things, I've learned from other people, and I try to give credit where credit's due. Some things I kind of stumbled upon my own. Some things I kind of had to think through and figure out through a lot of deep thinking, because certain challenges come up in your life. And, sometimes people don't, everybody reacts differently to adversities. Me personally, it makes me become more introspective. So anyway, that's where all these came from. And the idea for Email Players Rules came from another podcast. This is an example of me swiping an idea from a completely different niche. And this would be the Beige Phillips Show by host Dante Nero, who he's a comedian and former exotic dancer, former pimp, all this stuff. I don't know, you've listened to his show. He's former this, former that. But he has these things called the Beige Phillip rules, and those are rules for guys that need to get their balls back. Basically, that's the kind of show that is, like a relationship show. I said that's a great idea. I'm going to do some Email Players Rules episodes, and so we are. But yeah, we're on 106 now, so we're over 100, which is pretty cool. And unless you have anything you want to interject here, Jonathan, before I get started, I'll just roll right through these.
Roll, baby, roll.
Roll it on. Okay, so Email Players Rule number 106. You attract what you are, not what you want. Now, this is something that, I mean, Jonathan, I'm sure you see this a lot. People get very frustrated in business, right? Or in their personal lives because they're attracting the wrong people into their lives. And for business, it's just, to me, it makes no sense because if you suit your business to suit your preferences, this should never be a problem. But for example, I know many, many, many people, or have known many, many people, not as many anymore as I used to because I cut most of these people out of my life. But I know a lot of people who are very cheap-minded. They're cheapskates. They're price shoppers, right? Like these are the people who will drive 30 miles out of the way to save 30 cents a gallon on gas.
Yikes.
You know, and then, you know, it makes no sense, right? It's like their time means nothing to them. They're price shoppers, cheapskates. And then they'll complain that, oh man, all I get buying from you is price shoppers and cheapskates. That's good. They never like,
surprise.
They never like put these, yeah, it's like they never put it together that it's not, you know, the common denominator here is you. You can't blame them. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of the opportunity-minded people. Opportunity-minded people being people who are like just chasing different things all the time. Oh, I learned something here. Oop, forget that. I'm going to go get this product. Oop, forget that. I'm going to go with that one. Oop, that guy's not teaching. He's teaching something real sexy. I'm going to go there and forget this other thing I'm learning. And they never learn anything. They're chasing opportunities. They look at products as, for example, expenses and not investments. Like I'm talking about business building products. They're going to make you better. So for example, they'll look at email players and say, well, I can't, this is an expense I can't afford. That whopping $3.23 a day they can, you know, but they're pissing out $5 in coffee every day at Starbucks, right? But you know, who cares about that? But like that's their mindset. They have the opportunity mindset. Meanwhile, the smarter customers, the ones that I'm trying to attract toward me, the investor-minded people are the exact opposite. They look at it as an investment. They know if they invest $97 this month, they're going to make $900 or $9,000 back, depending on, you know, what they do with the information, all that. So my whole point is this, you attract what you are, not what you want. If you want to have different people in your life, if you want to get rid of low-class jackass people who are coming into your life, whether your personal life or your business life, you have to change because you're the common denominator in all your problems.
Uh-oh.
And, you know, this goes back to another email player's rule, Jonathan. I have no idea what number it is because we did so many of them, but where it's always your fault. Yeah. Whatever it is, it's your fault. You know, I know there's going to be some idiot that like writes me and says, well, what about, you know, a baby getting abused? Well, we're not talking about that. So a little bit of context goes a long way, especially when you listen to this show. So, you know, if you don't have context, you know, I'm trying to, you know, and that's the thing. What I just did there, Jonathan, is I hope it repelled people away who don't understand context. I'm trying to repel what I don't want. And people who do understand context and realize what idiot would actually complain about something like that know what I'm talking about, and they're more likely to want to stick around. So I hope this makes sense. This applies to your emails. It applies to your sales letters. It applies to your podcasts. It applies to your social media, all that stuff, all of it. You attract what you are, not what you want. If you want to attract better people, better customers, better relationships, better everything, you need to make yourself better. And Jonathan, I'm not trying to tell you this like I'm lecturing you personally on this. You're just the one I'm talking to right now.
I know that you beat up the whipping
you attract great things into your life. I know you do. You attracted me into your life, and Cupcake, and your son, and all that.
Go.
Okay, you're doing it right. Absolutely, that's what I'm talking about. Anyway, enough said on that one. Email players rule number 107. There are no feminists when the ship hits the iceberg.
Ouch. Women and children first.
Well, it's kind of like there's no atheists in foxholes, you know? Suddenly there's an old-time prayer meeting going on over there. But here's what I mean by this. Yes, I am taking a shot at feminists, but not directly. I'll take any opportunity to take a shot at a feminist because, you know, that they're feminists. But here's what I mean by this. It's very true. When the Titanic's going down, guess who got to go on all the boats? Right? Who's Bill Burr did a great spot on that. Bill Burr is like, should be required listening for everyone. When he did this joke about, he's like, I guess he's arguing with his girlfriend, is like this hardcore feminist. And she goes, why do you think you get paid $1 more an hour and I don't? He goes, because when the ship's going down, I'm the one that has to stay on board and you get to go on the lifeboat. That's why I get $1 more an hour. And there's an awful lot of truth to that. And it's true. But it goes beyond that. The whole concept, Jonathan, you may find me saying this not so shocking, okay? But there's a lot of people in this audience who are not used to my antics and who are probably listening to me for the first time. And they're going to have a little conniption after what I say. They're going to freak out a little bit. They're going to angrily draft up an email telling me how wrong I am and all this stuff. Yeah. And even though I have all the facts on my side here, it doesn't matter. This is how it's going to be. And I welcome that kind of stuff. I recommend someone do some angry push-ups first trying to get some of that evil out of their system first, or put that energy toward writing an email that will sell something instead of, trying to complain to me when I'm just going to laugh at you. But my whole thing is the whole concept of equality is complete and utter bullshit. And I mean, it's never existed. It never will exist. And it's used by a lot of bad people throughout history to do many bad things. And one example was a great example, actually, would be like the old communist regimes and all that. That's how they got everybody hooked in. Everyone's equal, all this stuff. There's no such thing as equality. No two people in this world are ever going to be equal. Equal opportunity, yes. Equal in deserving of dignity, yes. I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is this. It's never existed. It never will. People are not fair, okay? Not everybody's fair. The book Animal Farm is probably the best example of this, when the pigs say, some animals are more equal than others. We're all equal, but some animals are more equal than others. He was talking about the old communist Stalinists and Leninists and all that, because that's what they would do. And that's how it is. You think the political class considers you their equal? You think people listen to this? I know there's people listening to this who are still butthurt over Trump winning and all that. And by the way, let the record show, Jonathan. Let the record show. I did a whole show on why I'm not voting for Trump, and this was like a year before the election. Yeah. Remember that? Yeah. I said I'm not voting for the guy and I gave my reasons. I don't think first of all, he's not a conservative or right wing or whatever. He's not. He's just an economic nationalist, and he's going to put America first. But he's very, very left wing in a lot of areas, and people are probably already going to start seeing that very soon. Either way, okay, people who've been butthurt about Trump, if they really think that Hillary and Bernie and all those people don't think they're better than them, the political class thinks they're better than you. That's why they talk down to you. That's why they do all this stuff. It's just they don't consider you their equals, and yet you're out there, but they'll use the word equality. None of them think you're their equal. That's why they get better health care than you. That's why they get better perks than you. That's all that stuff. Okay, so they're just this whole idea of equality. Now forget the political part, Jonathan. I have an example from the corporate world. Social media, since everybody's so obsessed with social media. So there's a blogger named Vox Day who, I read his stuff. There's a lot of people don't like Vox Day. A lot of people misquote him and all that. He is who he is. You're not going to agree with everything he says. I don't agree with everything he says, but he is what he is. I respect the guy quite a bit. And as a writer and just as a deep thinker, he did this blog post back in November. Where are we in February now, Jonathan? I don't know what this whole time warp thing we got going on, how we pre-record these. Let's say we're in early night, whatever it was last October or last November. He was showing an example of how equality just doesn't exist, and it's never going to exist. And so I guess somebody did an experiment with this where they did 2 tweets using 2 different accounts. One tweet said, "I fucking hate white people and their inconsiderate asses for voting for Trump. Fuck you." That was one tweet. And then they reported it to Twitter, right? Because, that's pretty bad. Okay. Twitter said, well, it's okay. That doesn't violate any of our rules. So it's okay to, if you hate white people and you hate Trump, that's okay. Fuck you. It's fine. According to Twitter, it's free speech. Fine. And by the way, I don't care because I have no problem. I don't like censorship at all. So that doesn't bother me personally. If somebody says that, I don't really care. But here's the thing that would probably bother some people. So they did another tweet using a different account saying, "I fucking hate black people and their inconsiderate asses for voting for Clinton. Fuck you." Oh. The exact same tweet, just a different color and a different politician. Twitter suspends that one. Broke all the rules. And he showed screenshots of this. My whole point is this. Life isn't fair. There is no equality. It's not fair. Deal with it. Who cares? Everybody comes into this world with different advantages. Well, I'll use the word that everyone likes to use, John. I'll use privilege because that's like the word all the social justice warriors like to use. It's true. Some people are more privileged than others. Some people have advantages that others don't. That's life. You can't change it. So you can sit there and obsess over it and try to bring others down, or you can try to make yourself better. That's really your only choice. And I'm not saying it's fair because it's not fair, but life isn't fair. So this whole idea of equality and all this shit, it's just not there. You can either accept it and deal with it and actually beat it and, empower. I use the word, Jonathan, I'm going to use the word that all the chick shows like to use, empower yourself. And we talked about power in the first episode of this prestigious podcast that people, half the audience is pumping their fists at me right now and slamming the desk. But you just empower just try to gain power in your life. And a lot of this stuff it's just not going to affect you. That's my advice to everybody. All right. Privilege or not, wherever you're at, unless you're like a complete invalid, and you can't do anything, you can always act. And that's what I'm going to say. So enough with that one, Jonathan. I've already spent, I don't know how much time we
that's a whole show right there. I'm getting pissed off.
That was like a whole show. That's like a whole show, This time, I told people I'm going to not hold back as much as I did in the Ben Settle show because, not that I held back a lot in that one, but that was a reflection upon you and certain things too, because you were the partner on that. But this is all on me now. You can't blame Jonathan for stuff. He's not guilty by association very much. Maybe a little bit.
I want you to kick it up a notch.
Okay. Reach in there and turn it up a notch.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's keep going here. Maybe I can do that in this. We'll see. Well, the next episode, I am going to kick it up. I'm going to offend a lot of people in the next one. And not on purpose, not because I want to, but the very nature of what I'm going to do is going to offend a lot of Christians, and it's especially. And I'm not trying. I am a Christian guy. I'm not trying to do this, but there's a lot of them kind of need to grow up, and so that'll be interesting. Okay, so how's that for? What would you call that? An open loop? What I just did there? Was that just? Did I just do an open loop? The open loop.
Nice.
All right. Number 108. Email players rule. I was called Ben Subtle rule. It's not really my rule. It's the email players rule.
Get it. Ben Subtle rules.
Don't sell people what they aren't buying. Now, you may be tempted to call me Captain Obvious for bringing this up. Don't sell people what they're not buying. But this happens every single day. This is why people struggle in marketing. They're sitting there trying to sell things that people don't want. They simply don't want it. Just because you think it's a great product doesn't mean anybody wants it. And, Jonathan, I like to talk about interpersonal relationships and dating once in a while on these shows. Well, let's take an example. Some chick just followed me on Twitter recently. And she's like all empowered and all this, right? Like, I am woman, hear me roar, all that shit. Stuff that just, I love people. By the way, I don't take that as picking on anyone. I love people like that. Their horse shit is so like out there in the open. They're like a piece of clay I can mold. If they'll just listen to my show, Jonathan, I will have them on the right track very quick. But she's on there like tweeting over and over and over about how men like confident women over looks. And I'm thinking and she's also saying she's single.
Oh.
Now, and she's not bad looking. That's the whole thing. She's not, assuming that's her real picture, she's not bad looking. But I can tell you right now, that's not what guys are buying. We already have confidence. Okay, we already have friends that are confident. We're looking for attributes we don't have. A nice ass doesn't hurt. Maybe a nice pair of breasts, generous pair of breasticles, pretty face, someone who keeps themselves in shape. We don't care how many degrees you have. We don't care if you have a master's degree or a PhD. Okay, we're not looking for a tutor. Okay? I don't even care for. I remember hearing The Great. I say The Great in some ways, maybe not in others. Patrice O'Neill, the late Patrice O'Neill, was talking about this once. He's like, look, I don't care if she can read or not. I'll teach you to read if she needs to learn how to read. It's like, that's not what he's looking for either. He's not looking for a tutor. I'm glad you have a car, but I'm not looking for a chauffeur either. Okay, that's not the attributes I'm looking. And so that's an example. A lot of girls are out there selling guys what they're not buying, and they're frustrated. And on the other hand, there's a lot of guys out there selling girls what they're not buying. They're trying to up the romantic vibe and all this stuff because they think their feelings and all. That's not what they want. No matter what you always go by what people are buying, not by what they say they want. And if you look around, that's just not. I don't think Cupcake married you because you busting out your heart every day and writing her poetry. I'm guessing.
She married me because I'm an asshole, but she'll never admit it.
She married you. She knew the asshole she was marrying, and she embraced it.
You're so mean.
And she probably complained sometimes.
Of course.
She probably complained a little bit. She's like, oh, John, I wish once in a while you just wouldn't be so asshole-ish. And you just winked at her. And you said,
You're welcome.
You just winked at her, and you winked at her, and you said, Cupcake, that sandwich ain't gonna make itself. Yeah. And then all was well. All was well. And then you used the wet towel to kind of like slap her in the butt, to hurry up and get going. and all was good in the Rivera household after that.
That's right.
Because you didn't listen to what they had to say. You did what she's buying, which is your assholishness. People say I'm bad. Look at you, dude. I'm telling you rival me in this area.
No.
And so it is.
You're getting soft. I'm going to tell you right now. You're getting out on the road. You're getting out of your cave, and you're getting soft on me. We need to get you back under that bridge in the mud, in the dirt, and get you angry again.
Well, I think that I'm working back up to it. I mean, email players rule 107. There was not exactly endearing to probably most people. But,
maybe I'm immune to you.
But that's good.
Why.
They need to grow up. They just need to grow up a little bit. That's all. Jonathan, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help them. Okay, I'll take care of them. I'm happy to take care of them. Don't worry about it. Audience. I got your back. I will take care of you. I will lead, guide, and direct you to where you need to go in life. All right. And we're going to start with email players rule number 109. Okay, we're going to continue it. Having a gym membership is great, but even better is gym attendance, right? Now, how many people do you know like that? They go and they get a gym membership and never use it. It does them no good. You're better off like if you don't go, it does nothing for you. So it's kind of like the difference between reading and doing. People buy a book, but they never actually read it. But then they'll show off their their bookcase full of books and their $10,000 library. It's all horse crap. Just remember, there's no point in having all those books if you're not reading them. And as I say, John, as I've said on the old show, okay, it's better to read the 10 best books 10 times than 100 books one time anyway. So pick the really good stuff and go through it. Get a deep knowledge and not a wide knowledge, but at least go through it. And so anyway, that's pretty self-explanatory. Email players rule number 110. And we talked a little bit about this in one of the last episodes, Jonathan. Real game is no game.
Yeah.
Right? Now, game, we're talking about the game of like life. Okay. And like you have game, guy has game. Like he can go out and charm people and stuff. They say he's got game. Well, if you're coming at things tactically, that's not you have to learn tactics. I'm not saying you don't, but it has to become principles that are just ingrained in your psyche. When you approach things with a principle-based, and we went over all this, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, you come in with a principle-based way of doing things. You ingrain all this stuff in your mind, and you don't even have to think about it. You're now unconsciously competent, like driving a car. So this is how it should be in everything you learn in life that you really want to get good at. First, you start off having to think about things and all that and, freak out about, how do I write this subject line, for example, for email, whatever, what do I say to this girl, whatever. But eventually you just kind of get to a point where this becomes ingrained in you. It's not about tricks and tips. It's just about you, In fact, there's the movie Ip Man, IP Man. It's about Grandmaster Ip Man, who is, Wing Chun great. He's one of the guys who made Wing Chun great and well known. And in that movie, he's fighting this other like kung fu, who knows this other form of kung fu, this other guy. And the guy is talking about his style. And he goes, it's not the style, it's you that matters. In other words, it wasn't the Wing Chun that's made Ip Man great. It was just that it was his approach to fighting and all that, regardless of the style. And so it is with this. Real game is no game. All right. Email players rule number 111. Being a cheapskate and price shopper is no way to go through business. Son. You gotta say son, like I'm talking, giving this life lesson. And so we talked a little about that, but cheap and free is really the new expensive. Everybody wants things cheap and free. Sometimes when I go off gallivanting around speaking at places, Jonathan, I meet new friends, right? There's just people that I meet that I'm like, oh, I like this person. So I keep in touch with certain people or whatever, for whatever reason. And they'll start expecting me to give them like free stuff. Mm-hmm. Right?
Really?
I'm thinking, no, who the hell is it's like, why would I do? First of all, I'm not going to give free stuff as a principle of how I do business because I know free is the new expensive because whoever I'm talking about, they won't apply it. They won't take advantage of the knowledge. Jonathan, I went for a very long time. I had I've trained certain people, let's just put it that way. And every time I did something for free for people, they never took the knowledge and ran with it and used it. They just don't do it. It's not a character flaw. It's not malicious. It's none of that. It's just that if things that are free, where there's no skin in the game, are simply not taken as seriously. So if you go around being a cheapskate and a price shopper, you're just making things more expensive on yourself long term.
Yeah.
Enough said on that. And finally, to wrap up this Email Players Rules episode, number 112, Jonathan, you'll love this one. And I'm sure you'll agree with this. Successful people need loving too. All right. I know I do. All right. It's like I have helped certain people, okay, through some very hard times and, got nothing but contempt. It was that whole thing, no good deed goes unpunished. It just happens. It's no big deal. It's my own fault because, again, I'm the common denominator and it's my fault. Okay. I'm not blaming him. My whole point is this, though. Sometimes successful people just get shit on. We just do. We get blamed for things. It's all our fault. But at the end of the day, the economies are driven by successful people, whether you like them or not. And so if you're a successful person, I say go treat yourself. All right. And go treat yourself to a nice vacation or something nice. Go buy a baby something nice at the store or whatever you want to do. Treat yourself because you deserve it. And while you're treating yourself, feel free to give the middle finger to anyone who has a problem with it. Mm. And that's a wrap, Jonathan, for this Email Players Rules. Next week, I'm going to talk about, I kind of hinted at it. I'm not picking on any specific religion, by the way. I'm just saying there's certain people who are not going to like what I have to say. But I'm going to talk about negative emotions and why you shouldn't shy away from them and why a lot of what people would consider are negative and bad things, emotions and attributes, are actually very good. And it's a lot of the things that people think are good attributes are actually very bad or can be bad. So that's what we'll talk about next week.
I can't wait. All right, Bro Chacho, that is a wrap. We will be back in your earbuds next time. Thank you for tuning in.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To get your hands on a free issue of Ben Settle's prestigious $97 per month email player's newsletter, simply go to www.bensettle.com.
This is the podcastfactory.com.